Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the GradCracker webinar featuring Newton. So Newton advertises their graduate opportunities on GradCracker and have been doing so for the last 5 years. They are a UK-based management consultancy specialising in operational improvement in both the public and private sectors. But what does that actually mean? Let's find out from Rebecca, Stefano, Ollie and Rani. Rebecca is the Graduate Recruitment Coordinator. Hi, Rebecca. Stefano and Ollie are consultants and Rani is a senior consultant at Newton. So from my experience working with Newton, I know that Newton is a very hands-on consultancy. A lot of your videos on GradCracker are graduates talking about visiting clients on site, for example. But Rebecca, what else would you like to share with the audience about Newton and what makes you different and stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an operations consultancy, which means that we focus on operations within a business. Yeah. So often we work with clients to either make more of what they've already got or put processes in to reduce the amount of waste, make a service better or provide a better process, and normally involves a lot of saving money as well, which is obviously good. We work across... Oh, God,
I was just going to say, everybody likes to save a bit of money, don't they?
Absolutely. We work across 3 sectors. So like you mentioned, we work within the public and the private sector, yeah, and also within defence as well. So we're based across the UK working on those different projects. In terms of what makes us different, so we have a model where we won't charge a client fees until we've delivered what we've said we're going to deliver. Yeah. So that means that our neck is really on the line. And that we have to make those improvements that we've said we're going to make. We also stick with our clients for the long term as well. So once we've implemented a change, we don't just deliver a report and leave it on the CEO's desk. We'll actually stick with a client and make sure that that positive impact is felt in the longer term, which makes us slightly different from some of the other consultancies out there.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen some of your other videos on GradCracker as well. And when the consultants go into the employees, you actually make friends with the people that you're working with, don't you, when it comes to your customers, because you have such a close relationship and you are with them nearly, every day or every week or, bi-weekly. And so that really came across on your hub. So plans for the future, Rebecca, is there anything that you can share with us? Give us a bit of an insight about what's to come.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a really exciting time to be at Newton at the moment. We're on a huge growth trajectory and we're hoping to grow the numbers of people in our company by about 20% every year for at least the next sort of 5-10 years, which is massively exciting. Yeah. And obviously being in recruitment keeps us busy as well. Within that, we're hoping to grow our sort of digital bringing as well. So it means that it will make our operations work faster. We'll be using more data, improving the way that clients communicate and use data and technology as well. So that's really exciting. And then looking a little bit further ahead, sort of in the next 5 to 10 years, expanding into new markets. So hopefully within financial services and perhaps even working abroad, depending on our client demand as well.
Oh, wow. So lots on offer. You mentioned there about increasing your workforce by 20%, Rebecca. So is that a mixture of experienced hires and like your early careers graduate level students as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have a big offering for graduates and we take on over 100 grads every year, and then also experienced hire within our consultant body as well.
Fantastic. And an area that I really want to delve into a little bit more, Rebecca, with you before we actually meet the grads, is about social mobility. So on your hub on GradCracker, there was a gentleman on there and he basically said that the reason why he applied to Newton was what you do in society and the improvements that you want to make to society. And he specifically mentioned in this about social mobility. So why is social mobility so important to Newton?
Yeah, absolutely. So diversity in general, including sort of social mobility and candidates and clients from sort of lower socioeconomic backgrounds is something that's really important to us. Sort of the more diverse that our workforce is, the bigger ideas we're bringing, sort of the different relationships that we can build with clients, with new clients, sort of that diversity of thought really. Within Newton, some of the clients we work with, so for example, in the public sector, you might be working within a social care environment. So either helping to keep children out of care or supporting adults through the social care system. So if we can sort of have that impact, it will directly impact our clients as well. Yeah. outside of our work, we do work with some charities as well. So I've recently been working with a charity called the Elephant Group, and they aim to get students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds into the top universities. So we ran a summer school back in July, and we were sort of teaching students about what is consulting, what does it mean to be in a graduate job, as well as skills such as presentation skills, teamwork, and it was really fun. And we work with a couple of different charities sort of to support students to get into uni or to get into graduate jobs as well.
Brilliant, thanks Rebecca. And now let's talk about you for a couple of minutes. So what is your role? I mentioned, you know, your title, but what is your role? What do you do at Newton?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. A job title doesn't always say much, does
No,
it? So
it doesn't.
I'm a graduate recruitment coordinator. I started at Newton about 8 months ago, and I sit within our graduate recruitment team. So I only recruit grads, and I sit on the selection side of our process. So that means I support everything from the point a candidate applies and fills in the application form on our website, right through the process, hopefully until they get an offer. So managing those different stages, and when we're not recruiting, we're always looking at improving, rewriting the assessment material. How can we bring in more diverse candidates and make sure that it's a fair process? So yeah, managing that selection side.
It doesn't stop, does it, Rebecca?
It never stops, no.
It never stops, never stops. Thank you very much for that introduction. We're going to come back to Rebecca a little bit later on to talk about everything recruitment processes and what's involved a little bit later on in the webinar. So for now, what I want to do is go back and meet the grads. They've got some fantastic, really exciting stories to share with us. But we're going to find out, Ollie, your face makes laugh, you just smile all the time. We're just going to find out where they went to university and what they studied to start off with. And then we're going to go around again and get their quick fire facts, which are very interesting. So Ollie, Mr. Smiler, I'm going to start with you. Where did you go to university and what did you study?
Yeah.
So I went to Imperial College in London and I studied chemical engineering.
Good shout.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ollie. Rani, on to you.
I also went to Imperial College London and I studied physics.
Chemical physics. Stefana, last but by no means least.
I went to the University of Leeds, studied economics, followed by a master's at UCL in technology management.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stefana. And now on to your quick fact fire round. Rebecca, I'm heading to you.
Cool. So as it's lunchtime, I've got a foodie fact. So Newton did a project with a sandwich manufacturer a couple of years ago. And with the amount of waste that we saved, it was 2,700 tons of waste. And with that, you could feed 5,000 people for a year.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. These facts as well, just to go out about all the different sectors that Newton works in. So really interesting. Ollie, on to you for your fact.
Yeah, so for a client that we worked with in the defence sector last year, we managed to save them £120 million of taxpayer money.
Yeah, massive money there, isn't it? Thank you, Ollie. Rani?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, we worked with the central government and we helped over 10,000 vulnerable people access food deliveries.
Thank you very much, Rani. And Stefana?
I have an environmental facts. Working with a retailer on packaging saving, we managed to save the equivalent of 3 million A4 paper sheets, which is quite massive amount of environmental saving.
It is very massive. Thank you very much for that, Stefano. But before I'm going to move back onto you, Rebecca. Ollie, I'm just going to say there's a mister in your background and we can hear his voice is quite loud when you unmute yourself. Could you give him a poke? Right. Rebecca, I'm coming back to you while Ollie goes and pokes somebody. So you've got 4 opportunities which are currently live on GradCracker. You mentioned before that they're not just 4 opportunities, you've got hundreds of actual vacancies open to graduates. So you've got 2 consultant roles, one in operations and one in digital. First of all, could you tell the audience a little bit about these, so about the roles in particular, locations that the students can be based, and if you do have a deadline, if that's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a consultant working for Newton, you will be client-based. So what that means is, although we have our head office in Oxfordshire, you won't be based there for very long. You tend to spend your first month there during our induction period, but after that point, you'll be based on client sites. So you might be working on if we're in defence, up on an airbase or in a defence office, or if you're on client site, you might be working in a pork pie factory or in a different kind of factory anywhere across the UK, which is great because it means that you can live wherever you want, spend your weekends wherever you want, and during the week you just travel and tend to stay on client site for sort of, depending on the project, 3 or 4 nights a week. In terms of the roles, so the digital and operations roles are quite similar for the first sort of 18 months of your career at Newton. And in both, you'll be using your people skills and your ability to build rapport, to build relationships with clients, get really deep within their business and understand their problems, and then do some data analysis and use that data to present back to the client, and really tell a story. So find out what the problems are and come up with some solutions as well. In terms of the difference between the two roles, so in both of them you'll need really strong people skills, good analytical skills, but in the data role you'll be looking more at how data flows through a business. It might mean sort of implementing some software. So for example, in some work we've done in a factory recently, we've put sensors along the factory line that measure how the factory is operating, and what that means is we can save people time. So rather than someone standing there with a clipboard checking how the factory is working, our digital processes are meaning that everything is working more efficiently, and we can put that sort of body of resource somewhere else to make more improvements. That's sort of the biggest difference between them, really.
No, that makes sense. The pot pie factory did throw me a little bit, Rebecca. I'm meant to lie to you. I did not expect you to say that. So when it comes to, you mentioned about being based in multiple locations, it depends where the client is. What help does Newton give the students? So say, you're based in a specific area, but then you have to relocate. Does Newton give any help for those relocation, for that relocation that they have to do?
Yeah, so you wouldn't necessarily have to relocate for this job.
Right.
Quite a lot of our consultants will live, well, quite a lot of them live in London. Some remain in their university towns. Some people continue to live with their parents. It's really up to you. In terms of the travel, we say you'll never leave home before 6 a.m. on a Monday, and you'll never be home after 6 p.m. on a Friday. So whilst you're away, you'll be staying with other Newtons. And I've heard all sorts of stories about barbecues, football matches that happen in the evenings whilst people are away. So you've got sort of that peer support network, and then you'll also have your line manager on site to help you, and a development manager that sort of looks after your personal development and pastoral care as well.
I love the way that you call them Newtons. That's so cute. We're Gradcrackerettes at Gradcracker, aren't we, Jess? Gradcrackerettes. And then, so thank you very much for that, Rebecca. And you also have 2 roles based at your head office. So you mentioned Oxfordshire, didn't you? So there's the graduate programmes there. One's a general graduate programme and one's more focused on the IT stream. Tell us a little bit more specifically about these opportunities, what's on offer. And I know that you've got a pending closing date of the 22nd of November for those. So students need to apply ASAP. But tell us about what's on offer with those roles.
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, deadline is very much pending. So if you're interested in our head office roles, worth applying quickly. I didn't mention, but our graduate roles probably won't close until about January. So you've got a little bit longer to make applications for those. But within head office, you'll be based in our head office, which is just outside Oxford. It's quite rural, and it's really nice to come out of the city into the office. And at the moment, we're working sort of 2-3 days within the office, but it's very flexible. So on the first one, you've got both the people and the operations stream for head office graduate roles. And within that, you'll start and you do sort of rotations for up to about 2 years that last roughly 3 months. And you'll rotate between different functions. So recruitment, HR, the legal team, finance. We have a knowledge team, which is all about knowledge sharing and making projects better. And you'll do 3-month rotations within those. So it's a really good opportunity if you don't really know what you want to do, to find out what you're good at and where your skill set lies. We then expect people from that to go on to sort of be future leaders within the business. There's a lot of development opportunities and a lot of opportunities to get involved in the wider head office as well. So some of those graduates arranged an away day for us recently, which was really fun for all sort of 120 of us within the head office. For the IT stream, you'll be working closely within the IT team, and again, you'll rotate within those teams. So generally starting within IT support, moving into sort of software development, product management, project management, And you'll be sort of understanding, advising and implementing changes within the IT team, and sort of building applications, changing internal processes to make sure that everything flows nicely and supports the Newtons that are out on site when they need it.
Brilliant.
Brilliant opportunities that are on offer there. So don't forget what Rebecca said, get your applications in ASAP for the head office opportunities. Don't leave it if you want to apply to the other positions either. You know, I know Rebecca said that they'll close out in January, but get your applications in sooner rather than later. Thank you very much, Rebecca. We're going to leave you alone for a little bit and then we're going to speak to the grads and come back to you a bit later.
Yeah, my little saying at the moment when I'm doing my presentations, I'm like, you see it, you like it, get your application in.
I agree, definitely.
It could be a little bit snappier than that. See it, like it, apply. See it, like it, apply.
See it, like it, apply. Okay, so let's talk about roles. That was perfect introduction, really, Rebecca, there to find out a bit more about.
I thought you meant me. I was like, oh, thank you. So, no. Maybe not.
So what your experiences have been like at the moment. So Stefan, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. And if you could just tell us a bit about your role and what you've been up to.
Yes, so as previously mentioned, I'm a consultant and I'm actually part of the digital team. So which at the moment is I joined roughly like 8 to 9 months ago. It's not too similar to an ops role, but it's a bit more like data focus and in terms of like how the data flows through a company. And at the moment, the client I'm currently working with is a bread manufacturer, and my current project focusing on streamlining their distribution system. So how can I make sure that our products are manufactured at the best time and the best locations, and the trucks are ready to pick these products up and deliver at the right time to the clients. And in order to do that, we're trying to build software. So it's a very digital heavy project. And on the day-to-day, what this looks like, it's trying to look for like data-driven insights. So get large source of data, crunch data, get some output, visualize, and transform this data into insight that can be actionable with the client, and then basically work together with the client side by side to make sure that this insight becomes like a reality and we can drive like basically real actions out of this data. And I think this pretty much been my focus over the past months, but it's not as monotonous as it may sound. I think every day is different because every day there's like a new problem we're trying to solve, or something like a new area we're trying to focus. And as you may expect, like there's so many variables that come up each day, and also the clients we work with are very different. So there's always something new every single day. So well, I think at a high level, what we do is quite similar. I think every day is unique, which is probably one of the most exciting bits of the role.
Absolutely. So, sorry, Carla,
I was just going to say, probably the same question I mean you, Jess, but what kind of sectors have you worked in, Stefano, since you've been at Newton? Is it a variety, or have you just been focused on one sector?
I think at the moment I've gone through a couple of projects which has been in the same sector, which is our private/consumer cluster. So working with food manufacturers and retailers, but I'll be moving on to a new cluster soon. Since starting next month, I'll be moving to our public sector, potentially working in a healthcare project, which is something very exciting because I think they are so different. Like working in healthcare, we're working with like a bread manufacturer. At the end of the day, the kind of like the problem we find are like similar at the high level, and the way we tackle them and trying to find solutions, we go for a kind of like a very similar approach and process every time, which is data-driven insights and working side by side with our client to basically deliver some action and some results. So yeah, I think it's quite exciting, and I think it's very good to have the opportunity, especially early on as a grad, to rotate across our different clusters and basically try a bit of everything before deciding what better suits your needs or your personality or where you like to focus further ahead in your career.
Yeah, definitely. And Stefano, so you say you've gone from like food manufacturing to, well, we'll be going into the public sector. So how do you pick your next cluster? How does that work? How do you decide where you want to go next?
I think it's a bit of a mix of like multiple factors. Of course, like I think at the top there is what projects Newton has and what projects are kicking out on the short and medium term. But I think well beyond that, I think Newton tries to accommodate as much as possible the project you're going to with the request or the requirements of the consultants. So in my case, I wanted to do something that was different And as a digital consultant, I'm very interested in data-driven insights, and I felt like healthcare is a sector where there's a big development on that, and leveraging the potential of data to take better healthcare decisions. So I was kind of like quite keen to move to that area, and I basically talked to my line manager, talked to my development manager, which is Rebecca mention are basically your mentors through your Newton career, and basically told to them what I wanted to do, why I wanted to move to a different sector, and we basically worked together to make sure that was possible. And so yeah, I think it's quite exciting, and I think there's a lot of flexibility on that point of view.
Absolutely. Sorry, Carla. No, focus saying brilliant. Well, thank you, Stefano. I'm going to come to Ollie. I'm going to come to you next, and we're going to talk about projects after we've heard from Ollie and Rani. So, Ollie, same kind of question. Just tell us a bit about your role and your experiences so far.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so I'm a senior consultant at Newton. So the kind of project that I'm currently running, so I'm in the ops role, so I'm not in digital, but hopefully you'll see that there are quite a lot of crossovers between the different roles. So the project I'm currently running is a health and integration project. So at the moment, a big kind of push in the public sector is moving to kind of something called integrated care systems. So it's where you don't get like the council and acute hospitals working separately, you get them all working together to make sure patients have the best outcomes they possibly can. And so we've just started a project which is helping kind of one of those integrated care systems get set up. And specifically, I'm focused on the kind of 2 acute hospitals in the kind of area that we're working, and looking at kind of the patient flow through those hospitals. The reason for that is the more you can reduce the time spent in hospital, the better outcome a patient will have. And that is nearly always true. And so we're really working with those acute hospitals to make sure that we're minimising the length of stay of patients in their hospital, and therefore reducing the pressures on the hospital at the same time. So that's kind of the current role I'm focusing on.
Fantastic. And Ollie, I'm going to kind of come to this in a bit more detail, so maybe don't answer this question in too much detail, but you know, the where you are now in your career, you've probably experienced quite a few different clusters already, a bit like how Stefano's mentioned. So what made you pick this project, this sector, the area that you're working on now? Is it a conscious decision? You know, what made you pick that?
Yeah, so I think Stefano's talked a little bit about the kind of thought process and the discussion that takes place when you are kind of coming to the end of one of your projects. For me, it was really about variety. So I've been quite lucky in my time in Newton. I have worked in all 3 sectors, and I was really keen that I'd done quite a long time in the sector I was in previously. If I'm honest, I was quite comfortable in that sector. Like I had a lot of the context. I kind of knew the kind of political movers. Like I'd been there for a while, and I was looking for a bit of a change to kind of put me in a different comfort zone, a different type of work. So although the like methodologies we use across clusters are very similar, like the people that you're applying that to are very different, and the kind of the movers like feels quite different. So that was really what drove me to kind of move across to the public sector, was that's something completely new, which I'm really passionate about and want to kind of support with, but it's not something I've experienced yet. So that was kind of why I asked to move into the public sector.
Yeah.
So can I just have, just before we carry on with other questions, Ollie, just thinking about the situation with COVID over the last 12-18 months or so, how you'll have probably had to your workload will have changed, I'm guessing, you know, because there'll be a lot more people going into hospital and everything else. So how did you balance that then? So did you expected to see more people going into hospital, but how did you manage that then with your results and everything else? I bet it put a bit of a spanner in the works there.
It's definitely been a challenge. And I think that is just, well, infinitely more so a challenge for the system itself, i.e. the NHS, than us, if I'm completely honest. I think interestingly, actually, like the effect COVID had initially, like people going through hospitals like reduced massively. So the kind of the number of people going through COVID obviously like ramped up massively, but because of the like sharp change the NHS had to make instantaneously, meant that like the way they operated was very, very different. I think what we're seeing now is that like we're going back towards business as usual. We cannot like keep going with the kind of COVID way of working, because that won't be sustainable. And so the kind of trying to move back to the old way of working while still having the pressures that like winter and COVID brings means there's a huge amount of pressure on the system as a whole. And I think actually that, although like day in, day out, that means there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of people who are very, very busy, that makes what we're doing exciting, right? It's the actual impact we can have, and like it's the key time. And I'm sure everybody will see, like, you go onto the news every morning, there's always something about the pressures on our system. So that's what makes it exciting, basically. So yeah, it brings pressure, but also the opportunity from that pressure is something that makes me get out of bed in the morning, basically.
Yeah. Thanks,
and
Ollie. Sorry, Jess.
Motivated now,
Exactly.
more than ever before. So Ollie, if you don't mind me asking about your setup, now. So are you actually in the hospital at the moment? How does your offices work? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, like, really good question, and apologies for the background noise a bit earlier, everyone. It's because we're in the hospital. So yeah, we're based on site. So as Rebecca was saying earlier, like, in general, that is where, like, we at Newton are based, because that's we think is the best way to deliver value for our clients. You can design things in boardrooms, but really you need to be there seeing it to kind of actually make a difference. So yeah, I'm based on site Monday to Thursday at the moment, so that is in the hospital. And what the setup usually looks like is that there is an office that, like, the team will be working in, which is great, because it gives us not a safe space, but it gives us a space where we can throw ideas around. It gives us a space to, like, have those conversations. But the majority of our time will actually spend in the hospital, whether that's doing kind of studies on the wards, whether that's kind of like going and supporting specific activities that are taking place. So I'd say that probably like 80% of my time is like not spent sitting at a desk. It's like out there doing stuff, and then the 20% around that is like meetings and making sure that we're doing the right things and we're driving the right value.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Gosh, I bet the last 24 months for you then. How long have you actually been on this project for then?
Yeah, so I've been on this project for about 3 months now.
Right,
so
okay.
so it's actually a fairly recent move for me.
Right, okay.
But I'd say today looks very different to 3 months ago. Like, that learning curve is huge. But yeah, it has been a bit of an eye-opener, if I'm completely honest, like seeing a completely different view of the NHS is obviously amazing, and we're so lucky in this country to have that service for us, but seeing it from the other side and really seeing the kind of pressures it's under has been a bit of an eye-opener.
Yeah, wow.
Rani, I will come to you next. One more question, I promise. We keep saying, the benefit of Newton, and, I've seen it, and I've done my research before this session. You're all saying how it's so important for you all to physically be with your clients, to understand the mindsets, understand the businesses or the organization. How do you think that's helped you, Ollie? You've kind of touched a bit upon it, but, how do you think that's made your role better, and how have you been able to give more back?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things spring to mind for me. So I think the first is that, like, it means you're not sat behind a desk making slides for someone senior to go and have a conversation. Like, from day one, you are accountable for something. You're going to have conversations with people, so the rate of development is huge, and so that is something that I get out of that process. I think the other thing for me around the kind of what I get out of it is that it genuinely is exciting. I don't know about you, but when I'm on Teams all day, those days feel longer. Whereas when I'm running around the hospital, those are the fun, enjoyable moments. Those are the days that go absolutely like lightning, because you've really got the energy from doing it. So I think personally, it's the variety you get from meeting different people, meeting different clients, etc., makes the job more exciting for me. And I also know that going through that, setting me up for kind of long-term careers, that is actually probably the best place for me to be, and I'll get much better experience doing this than I would kind of in a kind of a slightly more desk-based job.
Absolutely. So imagine you guys in 10 years time, the experiences, the knowledge, the knowledge you're all going to have, the situations you're going to have been in, whether it be a pork pie factory or the NHS. You know what I mean? It's mad, isn't it? You don't think about it, but God, the stuff that you're going to see, experience, it's going to be phenomenal. Rani, coming to you next. Last but certainly not least. Yes, same question really. Tell me everything. What have you been doing? What's life looking like for you?
Thanks. The reason I was laughing is, honestly, it's something we talk about a lot, about these really niche pieces of knowledge that we have. So if anyone needs the price of a forklift, let me know. I still get the monthly newsletters. So as Carla mentioned earlier, I'm also a senior consultant, been at Newton for about 2 years now, and also on the operations side. I think in terms of what the operations role looks like for a senior consultant. It's more towards like starting to manage a small team. So again, this is something I absolutely love about Newton, is you get a lot of responsibility and a lot of development very quickly. And what's really great about it is they support you through it. So they give you the training that you need, they give you your development manager, and there's lots of just resources and articles out there that they provide you to help that. So I'm managing a small team right now. We're delivering a different work stream, and actually similar to what Stefano was talking about, we're working with a large grocery brand and helping them through the driver crisis. So you may have seen on the news, there is the lorry driver crisis, and people are just struggling to get all their products out on time. So we're helping them figure out how they can do that best.
And I can imagine this is going to increase with Christmas coming and everything else. So
oh yeah, it's crunch time.
Difficult, knowing that something's on the horizon and trying to solve it before then. So Rani, in terms of obviously, so you've been there 2 years, and in terms of the experiences that you've had in those 2 years, can you tell about maybe previous projects that you've worked on, and maybe what your favourite one was so far?
Yeah, sure. So I actually worked in the defence cluster for quite a while before I moved over to the consumer cluster. And one of actually my favorite projects there was part of a supply chain team. So that was, as you can imagine, fresh grad off induction, thrown into this team, and all of a sudden negotiating these like multi-million-pound contracts. And it was, it was crazy. But as Stefano said, the tools that you learn are just applicable to any kind of scenario that we go into. And it was stuff like, from the bottom, analyzing the costs that came in, what our suppliers were saying, trying to figure out, is that like industry standard? And not only that from the analysis side, but also from the people side, because at that point, when you've built up that confidence in yourself from the clients, they start pulling you into the negotiations. So all of a sudden you're sitting there in the room trying to get, as much value as you can squeeze out of the supplier, but also prepping the buyers and what the negotiation tactics are. So getting them to really understand what they should be pushing for, like what's the absolute minimum that we should accept, and also a lot of the psychology around how do you actually get into a negotiation and get the best out of it.
Do you learn all that then at Newton's, like psychology tactics and everything else? Because is that like a bit of a module that you have to kind of pass?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the digital side of our work, but something that we've actually matured a lot as a product over the last few years is what we call a people and change team. So that's a team that's basically done a lot of training courses, and it's starting to really like spread throughout Newton in terms of how do you actually get change to land in different companies, and lots of tips and tricks, as we call them, like singers that you can add to your projects to help. So like one that comes to mind is something we call the Ikea Effect. So people are more likely to use something and to value it more if they help build it. So it means if you can get in there from day one and actually build these solutions with your clients, they're more likely to keep it up when you left.
You don't live in my house, Rani, because IKEA stuff, and we put flat packs together, it's probably in the bin. It's all at the tip because we just argue. So that's a nice effect, but definitely not in the power household, you can imagine.
And I can imagine as well, all these personal skills that you're learning, you kind of, I guess, you learn them for that particular client, that, that way of working. But, if you compare you and Ollie, you might have similar skills, but then you're going to be in completely different situations, where emotionally it might be different or the environment's different. So I can imagine there's a lot of transferable skills, but then you're learning and adapting on those skills that you've already got as well, which is amazing. Imagine again, you guys in like 10 years time, we're going to be phenomenal individuals experiencing all these great things.
Completely, like there's lots of transferables and also just knowledge that you pick up, and that's also what I love about like this company, is because you have relatively short-term projects, like normally about 6 to 9 months. You join lots of new teams during the time, and you just pick so much up from all those around you, because someone might have had a completely different experience. You both work together on a project and they have a completely different way of doing it, and then between you can figure out between both of those ways what are the best bits of each to bring to it.
That's amazing. Ren, I'm going to stick with you. I know we've kind of talked about projects that you've worked on, but what would your favourite project be that you've worked in the last 2 years?
I'm going to cheat a bit. I think the supply chain one, definitely from the work side. I think the other thing is I also helped set up the women's network at Newton, and that's something I'm probably the most proud of. Just having seen it from day one, where there was a few iterations and like, clusters here and there, to where we are now, where we've got, I think our Teams channel has got over 100 people in, which is just incredible. So that's definitely what I'm proudest of.
So just talk that a bit about that a bit more. So in terms, you do events, or what kind of things do you do to network as that group?
Yeah, so I think Rebecca touched on it, like EDI and diversity is a massive focus at Newton. So not just in terms of the Women's Network, but also ethnicity. We've got something about the Pride Network and social mobility as well. So something we're really focusing on. For me, the thing that comes to mind is like every month we tend to have a different theme at Newton of something we're going to talk about. So recently we had Black History Month. We've also had Pride Month. And in March last year, we had Gender Month. So that was run by the Women's Network. And we did things like coffee catch-ups to just get people together and across the businesses. And as you can imagine, post-COVID, in a world where you're only Teams calling the people on your project or maybe the people that you started with, it's been really hard to meet new people across the business. So definitely a bit of let's just throw everyone together, make those connections, make sure everyone is meeting as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
But on top of that, things like we do lunch and learns, we get guest speakers in to talk about their experience. We ask a lot of the leadership at Newton to talk about their journey, so what they found hard, what they found well, what their strengths are, and can they share some of that with the rest of the consulting body. So yeah, there's a lot that we've been planning to get through.
Brilliant. That's fab. Thank you, Rani. Stefan, I'm going to come to you next. Your favourite project that you've worked on so far?
Favorite project, I would say probably the one I'm currently working on, which is the work on distribution planning linked to manufacturing planning. I think I like this particularly because how close we're working with the client, so close we got to the client. So basically my role was mainly focused on manufacturing, working with the manufacturing planning team, which basically decides across I think 12 factories across the country when products are going to be manufactured, at what point, and how many, basically, to satisfy the demand of the clients. And it was very much about like sitting in the office with them every single day and just kind of like sit next to them and basically try to understand as much as possible everything about their decision making. So, why did you plan this thing like this or then the other decision? Why are you doing this or then this other thing? And basically very, very slowly getting to basically their same level of understanding, and then starting from there, try to propose like new solutions on how we can plan better. And since we were kind of like getting to these solutions together, it was like so rewarding that I started feeling like part not only of the Newton team, but also the clients planning team. And basically we were together most days, kind of like almost brainstorming together some ideas, some solutions. And I don't know, I felt like getting so involved with the client and almost feel like I'm not only like a Newton consultant, but I'm also part of their team, and I feel like some certain level of involvement in what they're doing and why they're doing it. I think that's just like very special, and I think it's one of the best parts of working at Newton. How close you get to these people, and how rewarding it is to actually get the results, not just at a pound level or of saving money, which, as we said, it's also nice, but also how you're making like the life of these planners like easier and help them make a better job and help them also be more fulfilled on their day-to-day. So yeah, I think that was pretty amazing.
Oh, fantastic. So in terms of where you are geographically in the world right now, are you at the manufacturing plant now, or where are you?
I am at the moment, yes. Supposedly I live in London, but but Monday to Fridays I've been coming over the past 6 to 7 months up to the north. So I'm working close to Manchester in a town called Bolton. So yeah, I've been spending here the past like 7 months, and it's been quite nice because I think there is like quite a large team here between our planning team. We're like 6 people. Then there is a manufacturing team working properly in a factory that's sort of like 5 people. So it gets like a good number of Newton consultants. We're able to even though we're far from home, to organize some like fun activities, have dinner together, go to escape rooms, do some like fun golfing in the evening or something like that. So basically, even though you're away from home, you get this sense of like a companionship with your fellow Newton consultants, and you get to bond and do a lot of fun stuff in the evening.
Yeah, I can almost imagine, you know, you make these connections, you know, external with your client. I can imagine you probably want to stay in contact with them as well, don't you? You know, making those networks, making those relationships, you know, how's everything going? You know, and once you've moved on for a project, you probably want to keep checking in with them and seeing if they're okay. I can imagine.
Yeah, I think that's particularly topical to me, since, as I mentioned, I'm moving to a new project soon. I think I have only 2 weeks left on this project, then I'm going to move to something different. And yeah, I'm already kind of like starting to think, how can I keep up to date with what's going on here? Just like, not even like for the sake of the project, just I think it's something that I know so much about food manufacturing now, so and food planning. So I don't know, it's kind of like, it's interesting to keep up with it.
Definitely, especially when you immerse yourself as much as you do into the situation. It's quite hard to move from cluster to cluster. Talking about Bolton, football was on last night, so I bet it was busy last night. I watched that actually. I don't watch much football, but
you were moaning about it this morning. Well, we have to watch football last night, and now we're thinking, oh yeah, football.
And do you know what? It was actually quite a good game.
Was it? I have no idea. I don't watch football.
Yeah, I think we have I think at one point, one of the clients' teams, they gave me like a list of the best like restaurants, best sports bar in Bolton, and best like, basically for everything you want to do in Bolton, what's the best place to go. So yeah, we have like we know what the best sports bar in Bolton is, and we go there every once in a while if there is like a big football game or something like that. Especially when the Euro Cup was on, we were going to the best Bolton sports bar, and basically just enjoy the city, the town as well.
Brilliant. That's good. I know that's another bonus, really, because you get to travel. You know, when you finish in 2 weeks, then Stefano, where are you going next? Sorry.
I think I'm not sure which project specifically is going to be, but I know I'm already decided it's going to be in the public cluster and healthcare, but I don't know specifically where it's going to be located.
Yeah, so you don't know the location. That's what I was meaning.
Yeah.
Okay, exciting. And Ollie, favorite project you've worked on in the last 2 years or so?
So I'm going to cheat slightly, and I'm going to give 2, which I hope is okay. So the first, I was one of the people who worked in one of the pie factories, which actually was a lot of fun. And one of my specific roles was looking at, so I don't know if anyone's seen those like pastry slices you get in like service stations, but any of those that have cheese, any time that they tried to cook those and go through the oven, they basically kept exploding because the cheese would go everywhere. And so I spent 6 months basically trying to solve this problem of half of these pastry slices exploding in the oven, which was a lot of fun. Like it took us like, it was quite a complex problem, and so we used like quite a lot of like technical engineering like base skills to like solve this problem. So from like a pure like mentally stimulating point of view, that was still my like favorite time at Newton, because it was just so fun to turn up in a factory and trial things and like and stand next to ovens and counting the number of slices that had exploded or not exploded. And then I think for quite a different reason, so the project I did just before the one I'm on now, so it was with a defense contractor, but I think the reason this project was so enjoyable was because of like the skills of the client team. So it's probably the best client team that I've worked with. And that really kind of had a huge impact on the impact we were able to have. Like that was a real kind of like increase in the amount of value we could add to them, because they were so up for doing it and we were able to like work with them so closely. And so like we, like as Rebecca said earlier, we fundamentally like we have to deliver in order to get paid our fee. Like that is our business model and it works really well for us. But in this project, the KPI was at about 49% when we started. We had to hit about 75% for our like guarantee. But because the client was so brilliant and so effectively we were able to be so leveraged with them, and they did a lot of the like stuff we would normally do, when we left, the KPI was at 98%. So like just the impact you can have when you really take the time to kind of work with your client has been a bit of a game changer for me, because that's the model that I want to use on every project I do from now on. Like how can we leverage the client? How can we work with them in that best way to kind of replicate those results alongside the good work that we do anyway? So that 2 quite different reasons, but those are kind of like the kind of 2 projects that stand out for me.
And do you know what I want to ask you, even though it's such a stupid question? How did you stop cheese exploding?
So there are quite a few things that we had to do to like stop it happening, but the main 2 were so the temperature of your oven is really important. So if you basically the pastry on the outside cooks much faster than the like cheese in the middle. So if you turn the oven temperature up, then the like pastry on the outside will reach the temperature it needs to, and then the cheese inside is less likely to get to its boiling point and therefore less likely to explode. So that's one thing we did was we realized all of their ovens were cooking at different times and different temperatures, and so standardized that, made sure the ovens were working as effectively as they could be. The other thing we did is that they on the top of those slices, I don't know, they're called striations in the industry, but basically it's the cuts that go through the top of the pastry, and those act as vents to like basically let some of the steam out to stop the like pastry casing exploding. And what we worked out is they basically had two different like cutters that they used on the like production line, and on one of the cutters it was fine and you wouldn't get these problems at all, and on the other cutters basically it wasn't cutting through as deeply as it should have been, and there was like basically part of the way they attached it to the line was like slightly broken on one side, and that was leading to a lot of these boil outs. So we spent a lot of time trying to work out what the problem was, because it just seemed there didn't seem to be a pattern to it, but like the combination of the oven temperatures causing a lot of variation, and then these like rollers, they using them one day and not using them another day, meant that eventually we got to the bottom of it, and we solved the infamous boil outs problem.
Yay.
Well, that's good. It's good to know. It's all about consistency.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
I tell you what, when I came onto this webinar, I didn't expect to feel hungry by the time I came off the other side, but on this talk, I'm absolutely starving. We're going to talk
project. Like basically my entire job was counting like cheese exploded. Like the amount of time I just spent smelling like cooked cheese was torture.
But does it put you off though? Because I used to work at Thornton's, do the chocolate shop, and everybody used to say to me, "Oh, you know, Carla, don't get sick of eating all the chocolate. You do get sick to death of just smelling chocolates. I bet you get sick of smelling cheese."
Yeah, I have to say I've eaten significantly less of those slices since leaving that project that I did at the time.
I could do doing your job. I could do with eating a lot less cheese. And what we're going to do now is thank you, everybody. That was really something special. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you about the training and development that's offered to the grads when they first start. So you mentioned about an induction month when the grads first join Newton. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Is that based at your head office? What can students expect when they apply?
Yeah, definitely. So when you get an offer with Newton, before you even start your job, we'll start that package of support. So there's an online e-learning platform, and you can do some training about Excel and data analysis. And there's a reading list as well to start you thinking about sort of those psychological elements that we've spoken about today. So before you even start, the support is in place. We also have sort of offer holder groups, we have meetups and sessions, so you can meet consultants that will be starting at the same time as you, so you can already start building up that peer network as well. And then when you start at Newton, you have a 4-week induction, we call it, and that's basically the onboarding for you when you start as a consultant. So it's based 3 weeks out of 4 are based at our head office in Oxford, and Newton will pay for all your travel and accommodation, so you don't need to worry if you're not based in Oxfordshire. And it's teaching you sort of the skills that you need to be a consultant, really. So some of the key methodology that our consultants use, some of the key sort of how to interact with clients, how to run a meeting, how to get the most out of what you want. If you're a digital consultant, then there's some extra training about data analysis and writing pieces of software. So that's really the first 2 weeks. And then in your 3rd week is what we call site week. So you will go out onto a client site, put what you've learned in the first 2 weeks to work, and start seeing change, really. So even as early as week 3, you can expect some responsibility, which is exciting.
Crack on straight away then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, love it. So I think as well, Rebecca, we mentioned before when we've been speaking, and also the grads, and a lot of the grads on the hub on GradCracker mentioned about the speed of the development that the grads have there. And I'm going to come to think about that. I'm going to come back to you grads now, and just ask you about what training development have you been through that you think, right, I learned a lot from that, and what did you enjoy the most? And Stefana, I'm going to start with you.
Yes, I think I actually may have something a bit interesting and different to bring up to the table, since I'm part of the digital team. I think something that when you join the digital team, well, you supposedly do very heavy digital work. there is not a very strict requirement on already having those strong digital skills. So since joining Newton, on my perspective, has been a very strong focus on how can I build those kind of like skills that will allow me to build data pipelines, improve data flow, but also write software, which is something that had like only lightly touched in my university career. So basically sit down with my digital mentor, which is basically the person who's following my digital development across my career in Newton, and we tried to set up some goals and some training on how we basically develop those digital skills over the past year. And I think that was like that was pretty incredible on basically setting up those like training sessions for like Python coding or for like data flow and data pipeline, both with him or like setting up some independent trainings, or also attending some in-person digital training events Newton holds periodically across the year. And I think all of that combined, I think it's been pretty incredible how much I managed to develop my digital skills as a digital consultant over the past year. And yeah, and I think that's quite incredible. And now going into a project, I have like a broader set of skills of digital skills that I can implement when working on basically any type of project, any type of data analysis. So I think, yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing I have to bring to the table.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And from your point of view then, I know you mentioned about your digital skills. From a student joining Newton, what hints and tips would you give them to be successful and to enjoy the first, couple of months at Newton?
I think one of the two things that make working Newton so special as a grad is the focus on development. So there's always a focus for you to improve and to basically become the consultant that you would like to be, even where you don't have necessary skills. And then there is basically the extensive collaborative mindset of every Newton. So basically you're working with the team, you're almost living with your team on your own side. So there is also that intense focus on being with your team and being together. So I think the two main tips I would have to basically make the most of your first month at Newton is don't be afraid to basically engage as much as possible with their team. They're there to support you, then they're to help you, and everybody's been basically for the same process, for the same induction, for the same like struggles. So don't be afraid to rely on your line manager, your mentor, and also the other consultants in the project. And the second tip is don't be afraid to acknowledge your weaknesses, as long as you have a plan to basically develop those skills. So you can be very clear and upfront with your manager, your mentors, who you're working with, and say, I don't feel comfortable with this particular skill set, like which could be anything such as like interacting with senior clients. But that's kind of like the first step to be okay in the next 3 months. That's what we're going to do to get you to the level that you want to be. And I think those two collaboration and the development combined, that's what really helps you in Newton like progress so fast and then get so much responsibility early on and basically move along in your career in Newton.
Yeah, I think you've just hit the nail on the head there, Stefano, because when I've spoken to my contacts at Newton in the past, when students are going through the application process or the recruitment process, they all say, mention your weaknesses as well as part of the whole assessment centre, because you can go there and say, you can prove your strengths, but if you do have some weaknesses and some areas that you want to improve on, the recruitment team want to know about those as well, so then they can guide you through the different assessment centres, the different processes there as well. So yeah, really good point there, Stefano. Thank you very much for that. Ollie, I'm going to come to you. So training development, what part of it has really struck a chord with you?
Yeah, so I think the training that I most enjoyed and was probably the most illuminating for me at Newton has been as Rani said earlier, as you go from a consultant to a kind of senior consultant, your role changes slightly. So you go from being accountable for a project to being accountable for leading a work stream with a couple of managers usually, and you get quite a lot of training on basically how to be a manager. So I think something I hadn't really appreciated is that being a manager and being good at the kind of role you're managing are two quite different skills. Just because you are fantastic at being a consultant doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a fantastic manager of consultants. And Newton basically has a whole week set aside that you you leave your site, you go and you have a group of peers essentially, and you all go through this training together. And I think taking a step back and really being able to talk about it and how it's feeling like made a huge difference for me. And I think a lot of the things I learned in that week have like really impacted the way that I then interact with my team, and also how I interact with my manager too. And I think it definitely works both ways. So that's the kind of most important training I think that has been given to me over the kind of 3 years I've spent at Newton.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks very much, Ollie. And Rani, just to finish off with you.
So I probably agree with Ollie, like as Rebecca was saying as before, there was a really good pipeline set up. So it's almost, I would say, every 3 to 6 months you're going on another training course. And it's really great to make sure you've got that continual focus. But probably the one I found the most fun was not only do you have this pipeline, like projects sometimes put on different training courses depending what the project needs. So the supply chain one I mentioned, we actually went on a hostage negotiation course. So it was run by like the top hostage negotiator at Scotland Yard. It was like the end point. You had to negotiate hostages out of a bank. It was a whole thing, but it was super, super fun and like incredibly useful.
Wow. Imagine me and you going on that, Jess. Jess will just start crying. I'm going to cry if you don't bring them.
I'll cry.
I will cry. I will push some tears out. Thank you very much for that, Rani. So now I'm just going to go on to benefits. I mean, you've all mentioned about some fantastic benefits that are on offer at Newton. But what would you say is you really think, oh, this is a key benefit for me that you want to share with the audience? And I'm going to start with you, Rebecca, if that's okay.
So I think one for me is quite a fun thing that Newton do is in terms of like, I guess, the like extracurricular activities that we offer. So Rani's already spoken through a couple of the groups that you can be a member of, but also we run activity days and what we call N weekends. You'll notice that lots of Newtons use N puns, some better than others, but so I think it's about 3 times a year you can go on a subsidised weekend away if you want to. It's all optional, and they've done all sorts in the past. So in January we are going on Ski N, which is a weekend ski trip. A few months ago they went on Dev N, so went down to Devon and did all sorts of beach activities and stayed in a couple of little cottages down there. They've done Relax N, Golf N, and the company will subsidise that for us. And I think it's a really nice opportunity, again, to meet people outside of your team and get to know someone really well in a weekend so that you've got friends in other areas of the business. So I think for me, that's probably one of the most fun perks that I really like.
So you guys out there who are watching, if you've got the nth degree, get your applications in.
Hey.
Ali, you can have a job.
I was going to say that at the end, and I was just like, I haven't even prepped Rebecca to give me that introduction. Buzzing. Ollie, I'm going to come to you to your key benefit.
Yeah, so I think it's like quite a broad one, but I think like Newton is a genuinely like people-focused company, and I think a lot of people say that, but it genuinely is true at Newton. So I think like a lot of consultancies, you do work quite hard, and I think like the fact that Newton's first thought is always about its employees and like the impact they're going to have on you, and makes a huge difference, I think. So yes, you get the like personal development, and you get kind of like all of the other benefits I'm sure the others will talk about, but for me, like Newton actually caring about me and my development makes a huge difference. Yeah,
of course it does. Thanks very much, Ollie. I hope one of you two are going to talk about what Ollie's just mentioned. Rani, onto you, your key benefits.
Yeah, I massively agree with both. Like, it's just a really fun place to work. I think another key benefit for me is the responsibility you get. So Rebecca talked about site weeks. Day 1 of site week, I was in front of a client. It was terrifying, but that's how you learn, and you get the support from your managers and the people around you to help you through that. And yeah, the progress that you make through your development because of that is incredible.
Perfect, thank you, Rani. And Stefana?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm on the same page.
Yeah,
I think
you were.
the main benefit of work at Newton is the focus on people, which is making sure, focusing on your well-being, focusing on your free time, making sure you have like activities, but also focusing on your development, making sure that you become the consultant you want to be, and you have a good plan and the good support to get you wherever you want to be in your career. So yeah, I think to me that's most important.
Brilliant, thank you. And you've all been nodding along to what everybody else has been saying as well, so that's been lovely. So to finish off, Rebecca, can we just guide the students through the application process? So as me and Rebecca mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there's 4 opportunities open with lots and lots of vacancies, so make sure you get your applications in. When a student applies through GradCracker, Rebecca, what's in store for them? What's the journey to being successful?
Yeah, definitely. So for our graduate consultant roles, obviously you can apply through GradCracker and you'll be taken onto our online application form, which is really short. You don't need a CV, you don't need to write a cover letter. We just want to know some details about you. After that, you need to do some online tests. So there's 2 tests that are sort of mathematical interpretation and then a couple of data tests as well. But that shouldn't take you any more than about 50 minutes. Following those tests, you need to do a video interview. So it's sort of a pre-recorded. We'll ask you some questions. We want to get to know you a bit better, get to know your personality and everything like that. Following that, you'll be invited to a selection day. So our selection days, or some people call them assessment centres, are taking place virtually this year. And that's a whole day of activities. So you'll do a group exercise, a case study, have a mini interview, and all of those activities really closely reflect the work that we do at Newton. So most of them have been written based on projects that we've run, and it's really testing the skills that you need for Newton. We don't want to test people just for the sake of testing you. Make sure you get the most out of it. And then lastly is a final interview. So our interviews are in person this year, which is great. It's really nice to meet so many candidates, but you'll go for dinner the evening before. There'll be a couple of consultants at dinner, and it's not assessed. It's just an opportunity for you to get to know us on a really personal level, and ask any questions that you've not had the chance to ask. And then you'll have 2 interviews the next day with a senior panel, some senior members of Newton. And obviously throughout the process, if you see us out on campus, you can use the chatbot on our website, you can come to GradCracker or email the graduates team, and we're on hand to support you through that whole process as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rebecca. It's been brilliant to hear all your insights and stories today. So thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget, closing date for the head office opportunities 22nd of November. So get your applications in sooner rather than later. So thank you everybody for joining us. It's been brilliant. Next week, Jessica is running the webinar. You have to join us for that, just for the laugh. So that'll be at the RAF. Will be joining us next Thursday at 2 o'clock. So join us then. But for now, thank you very much, Newton. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you all and speaking to you all, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks.
Bye bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.